Okay, there we go. Well, this is wonderful. Spring has sprung, the grass is riz, right? Let's hope so anyway. For over 30 years, wow. I wonder where the last 30 went. Lynn has been sharing her expertise and passion for the garden with clients. Her extensive work as a horticulturalist, landscape designer, and registered horticultural therapist has given her invaluable insight into creating stunning outdoor spaces that promote a joyful connection to nature. A keen plantswoman, Lynn's designs are known for their extraordinary plant combinations that create interest and enjoyment of the space no matter what the season. Her ability to work closely with each client to create thoughtful custom designs and her commitment to excellence is unrivaled. So, Lynn Leach, take it away, please.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for having me here today. I'm just going to get in, and you can let me know, Linda, if I'm in a good spot here. Yeah, so we're going to talk about spring plants, kind of as a follow-up to the opening, little icebreaker. And there's a lot of ways that you can do this. So I think for a lot of you, and especially if you watched me last winter, you have a planter on your front step that maybe still has some really crummy looking greens that were fresh in December and now look terrible. And so hopefully if the weather changes a little bit, you'll be able to pull those greens out and freshen it up for spring. It is a temporary planting because just like Linda alluded to, there are certain plants that you can put out at this time of the year that will tolerate these frosty nights. And then there's certain plants that we're just not ready for. So today I've brought all of these, beautiful early spring plants that would be temporary, that would get you through in your planters until about mid-May, when you could do more traditional annuals, like say geraniums or begonias. But let's face it, after a long, hard winter, we are anxious to get going with spring color. So if you have a planter at your front door, you would simply pull out your fresh greens, and hopefully your soil's in there and it's fresh. You top it up a little bit with some fresh planter soil. And I like potting soil. I buy what's on sale, so I'm not fussy about it. You just go into your local garden center or the hardware store, and the potting soil is nice and it's nice and lightweight, so easy to work with in there, and doesn't have weeds, which is important in your planters. It also has great drainage, so that's the reason. Look for potting soil rather than garden soil. So then you're going to be hopefully heading to your local garden center to see what's available. And that's the best way to sort of see what's going to work for you. There's a whole pile of things. I went into Walters, Nichols, also like shop local. We've got some great places close to us, and they've got a fantastic selection of things that you could put out. So we spoke already. I'm just going to kind of go through them briefly. We spoke already in the introduction about pansies, or Johnny Jump Ups, which is the little tiny minis. And such a pretty, and I think quintessential spring flower. I think a lot of people do this now. I love them for a lot of reasons. They sort of take me on a trip down memory lane. My grandfather always planted pansies, and he used to love like the little faces. Bring it closer so you can see. So pretty. He called them little faces. Some of the little violas actually have like little whiskers. It almost looks like a cat face, but very, very pretty. And they'll keep going right into summer. And there's a couple of tricks to kind of keep them going. You can see that this one, and again, I'm going to bring it a little closer. You can see that some of these flowers have been. Take them off. Just pull them off. You can pinch them off with your fingernail. That will keep new blooms continuing to go. They do sort of peter out when it gets super hot, like July, August. They're kind of like me. They don't like the heat. But you can keep them going for quite a considerable time. What I do is I use them in my planters. And then when I switch my planters over for summer, I dig them out and I put them right in the garden, sort of in a spot where maybe they get some afternoon shade. So that kind of can keep your pansies going. The other things that I love to use are bulbs. I am a bulb girl. I think it's your first blast of early spring color, and they're very, very easy. So I brought a little assortment. I've brought these beautiful hyacinths, and they come in pink, blue, or white. I've got beautiful blue ones here today. And what I love about hyacinths, they get a little bit higher, but it's fragrance. Beautiful, beautiful fragrance, particularly if you have your planter at the front door. I chose just a little container. Honestly, I got it at the dollar store, so you don't have to go expensive, but I would tuck that right up next to the front door. So to me, it's important to have something that when you get to the front door smells like spring. So those are the hyacinths. I've also got daffodils, which again, I'm a yellow girl. So I'm always so happy to see these out in the garden centers. You can sometimes buy them where they're just kind of coming up out of the ground. And that's only 3 bulbs. These ones are mini daffs. This particular variety is called tête-à-tête, which is French for head to head. And they almost look like they're talking to each other, sharing a little secret, because rather than facing up, they kind of face out. But I sort of like this little short variety because I think in a planter, it doesn't get floppy, stays kind of tidy, and it's just a pretty one to fill in. I also found these sweet little things, which are grape hyacinths. Again, nice fragrance to them. I sort of liked that they're blue. You can occasionally get them in white, but generally they're blue. And I kind of thought that would be pretty with the yellow daffodils and with the blue hyacinths. In the case of all those bulbs, again, when I'm done with them in my planter and I'm switching my planter over for summer, I pull those bulbs back out. I dig a hole and I stick them in the garden, and they'll come back year after year after year. So even though I feel like bulbs have got to be a little bit dear, a little bit pricey, it doesn't mean that you use them for 6 weeks and then throw them out. Pop them in the garden where you can enjoy them for years and years. And certainly all these bulbs will spread. So you'll get, especially in the case of the grape hyacinths and the daffodils, that you'll get a nice big clump out in the garden if you do that. So the other plant that I found, and I was looking for a few things. I often use parsley in my early spring planters because parsley will actually take some very cold nights. A lot of people don't realize that. But honestly, it wasn't available yet. I went a couple of places. I'm assuming this weekend, as temperatures kind of warm up, that you'll start to see some of those other things. But what I did find is, again, one of my favorites. And I'm going to get close so you can actually take a look. And it's called ranunculus. And it's another spring plant. It will take considerable cold weather. Last night's like -8 was probably too much for it. But from here on out, like -2, -3 degrees, ranunculus it'll just be fine out there. It again is like the pansy in that it will be beautiful through until it gets hot. As soon as it gets hot, it wilts down like a little English rose. And then you could save it. You could, try to get another season out of it. Honestly, this one, it goes on the compost pile and becomes soil for next year. So that's sort of, I got one more note out here. I like to pick up something that's going to spill out the side. And so most of the ivies, again, will tolerate considerable cold weather and still look pretty perky. And so I picked up one of those to sort of spill out over the side. So I've got a few other odds and sods. We'll get to those. So I start by filling my planter. Not all the way, but probably about 3/4 of the way. And what I'm hoping to do is just to be able to drop those bulbs containers in there. And then I'll tuck in some soil. To get these guys, and you can break them apart. I actually like planting them as a clump. So I'm giving it a good squeeze to see if I can ease it out. Oh, that's what I like to see. Look at those beautiful, healthy white roots. Absolutely gorgeous. And I'm just going to tuck those in. You want it planted at about the same height as it was in the pot. So you're going to dig down your soil until it sort of sits like that. It already looks hopeful. And then in the back, I'm going to put this ranunculus because it's a little bit taller. Again, I was kind of going for like a pink, blue, and yellow theme. All the colors are beautiful. I don't get fussed up about getting real matchy. Some people do, but this is your chance to kind of express your own artistic flair. You know, because there's lots of different colors to pick from. Look at it, I should have picked a bigger container. Look at, I have trouble restraining myself in the garden center at this time of the year. But that gives a little height in the back, and then your hyacinths are gonna get nice and tall behind there. Then I'm gonna tuck one of the daffodils, again, lots of big roots. I just squeeze that pot so I can slide it out. And it usually comes out just like in a big, in a big ball. You can split it, but like I say, I kind of like putting them in all on their own. Ivy, again, it sort of spills out, and I sort of kind of like to do it, you know, in the front corner or maybe in the back corner. Again, the sky's the limit as far as layout. You can do whatever you want. You know, put it in. If you don't like the look of it, move them around. They don't mind. Okay, that's probably, I would put the grape hyacinths in. I'm gonna do a bigger pot when I get home, and I'll use those grape hyacinths. I'm running out of space, believe it or not. And then I want to make space for the pansies for sure, because again, it's one of my favorite, and such a pretty little thing. So look at those nice healthy roots coming right out of the bottom. And honestly, that's why I purchased from one of our local garden centers. You're going to get quality plants. They sometimes are a little bit more money, but you know that if you go into Nichols or Walters or Walgraves, you know that they've been professionally grown, professionally cared for. And I think that's important in having success. So you're just going to pop those out. Now, there's always some debate. Do I break up the roots when they're all root bound like this? It'd be an interesting survey. And when I ask people, I'm going to say it's about half and half. Some people just plunk it in just like that. If you did feel like it's a little pot bound and you wanted to encourage it to sort of root out a little bit better, you just gently, I'm just using my thumb up in there, and just gently breaking that shape, the shape of the container, to sort of encourage those roots to spread out and grow a little bit wider. Now, when I'm doing a spring planter, I plant things closer than when I do a summer planter. And the reason for that is really, this is just going to be in place for about 6 weeks till you get your summer stuff in. So it doesn't really have too much opportunity to grow. So I kind of jam it full, knowing that there's you know, the summer planters really have 4 or 5 months to really fill in and grow. And so I end up leaving more room for things to do well. And just kind of gently breaking apart that root. And generally I make my decision about whether I'm going to do that or not based on how root bound it is. And these pansies, you can tuck basically anywhere that you've got a space. Again, I sort of jam them in there so that I've got lots and lots of color and interest. Now, if it stays cool, your bulbs will stay for quite a while. If we get like 3 or 4 days of heat, you'll see that things will kind of progress pretty quickly. If, let's say, your daffodils kind of finish, we got a late Easter, so you're probably interested in having something really pretty at the front door for Easter. If you feel like the daffs finish too early, pull them out and fill the space with pansies. But if it stays cool like it has been, you should get several weeks out of this. And then tucking in. Ideally, you do this outside. I'm making a hat for us there. Part of the fun. So that's actually looking quite full. And then at this point, you're going to take your potting soil and you're just going to fill in any gaps. You just kind of slide it in there with your fingers, make sure that everything's sort of settled in. You want to make sure you give everything a really good drink. And that's a good way to sort of let the soil settle in around those root zones. And then once you water it, you sometimes have to go back in with a little bit of soil and just fill the gaps. You just want to make sure that there's fresh soil around everything. Now, people often ask me, if you've seen me present before at all, in container gardening, I'm a big advocate of using fertilizer, particularly with the summer planters, because again, we're encouraging these things to grow and we want them to fill out and be beautiful. With the spring planter, I honestly don't ever fertilize. Again, these things are not actively growing. Pansies are not a heavy feeder. And again, if you buy them from a reputable garden center, they've been fed lots of fertilizer. They'll get you through the next few weeks. Bulbs, because everything is stored within that bulb, they require next to no fertilizer. So for the planter, I would hold off until you get into summer, and then you're going to put in your slow release fertilizer to get you through the season. But definitely you've got to water. So this would be pretty on its own, but I like to sort of take things to the next level. And there's lots of ways you could do it. Again, if you're doing planters that you have at your front door, maybe you've got birch stems in there already. I leave them. I think that the birch, the white with the yellow and all the bulbs can be really pretty. So I take out the greens, but I leave those birch stems. If you have dogwood, a lot of people use the red dogwood. I usually pull that out because I feel like by now it's getting a little tired looking. What I do look for at this time of the year, and this is where you take your grandkids and you go for a walk, maybe down by the river. Be careful when the river levels are high, but you will find, lo and behold, pussy willows. And I look for these. I have a few haunts that I know if I go, I'm going to find some. I'm very fortunate. My dad owns a farm and it's swampy. And pussy willow love to grow near water or in swampy conditions. So that's where you're going to find it. I did see some on the rail trail, but I wouldn't dare, ruin someone else's day by taking them. I try to, cut them respectfully so that next year I know I can go back to that same spot on my dad's farm and there'll be more. So I'm usually pretty careful and pretty respectful with the harvest. What I love about pussy willows, and this will be interesting to talk about at the end of the meeting today, is I feel like above any other plant at all, this is a material that if I bring to a group of people to work with, it always evokes a story or a memory of childhood. And I know in my own case, growing up on a swampy farm with two sisters, this was a rite of spring. Mom would be like, girls, go see if you can see any pussy willows out there. And we would go back together and we would collect bouquets and they would be all through the house. And it brings back such lovely memories of spring. And so I don't know, again, I'm interested to hear if any of you have similar memories, but and it's just a pretty material to use. Now, I did see that if you are not able to get out for a walk or you don't have a spot where you can cut them, I think I saw some at Sobeys. Definitely Walters had a few, and you can actually buy a few stems. So what I do with those, again, this is where you're going to get artistic. And you're going to tuck those guys in. And what I like to do is when you're sort of looking at your container from a design standpoint, it's really nice to have it be twice as high or 2.5 times the height of the container. The pussy willows get you there without having, because a lot of the spring plants stay quite low. So the pussy willows sort of get you up and above that, kind of that two times height that just looks nice on the arm. And you can just jam those in there. So pretty. And instantly you're looking like spring. Now, again, if you don't have access to pussy willows and maybe you've got some stuff down in the basement, I like natural stuff and I like to use real plants. However, there are times where you sometimes have to cheat a little bit. And so if you shop at Michael's or even at the dollar store right now, there are some really, really beautiful spring, and it's artificial, but mixed in with all of your fresh real plants. Sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference. So if you're looking for something with a little bit of height, I think my biggest recommendation is if you're doing that, look for something that would be in bloom. So these, I think, resemble forsythia blooms. I've seen cherry blossoms, apple blossoms, like you can get sweet little things. And if you just, you don't need a lot of them, but it can give you some height and some color that you normally wouldn't be able to achieve. And so I'm giving you permission. Yeah, and that's basically spring planter. So again, you're gonna water, you're gonna take care of it. I think if you end up, because sometimes that happens, it looks like we're gonna have a cold spring this year. If you feel like we're gonna get a night where it's below, say, -4 or -5, just bring it in overnight, just bring it in the front door, drag it into the garage, just to give it a little protection. If it's in a big container and you know that you can't move it, you can just throw an old bed sheet over the top. And that will help just sort of protect it. If you forget, the cold night's not going to kill anything. What will happen is your pansies will lie down. You may lose those flowers, but within a couple of days of warm temperatures, it'll pop up a new one. So, yeah, so if you can protect it, great. If you can't, and like I say, anything above like -4, -3, we should be good from here on out, I think. Fingers crossed. So, yeah, so that is the spring planter. If I can encourage you to do, to get out there, I think after a long, hard winter, we are anxious to get out there. Watching things come up out of the ground, seeing what you've got. Maybe your peonies are starting, maybe your Johnny jump ups in the garden are there. Even if you're in the toque and your winter coat, get out there, get walking around. And I really think if we all try hard enough, we can bring on spring together. So thank you very much for having me today. And I think enjoy spring, and maybe we'll see you this summer.